Good afternoon, guys. This is Miss Vance, and we are studying the book of Echo by Pam Munoz Ryan. And we have read the first 5 chapters, and we're on chapter 6 today. So we're learning about Friedrich, and Friedrich is in Germany, and he is working at a harmonica factory, and his dad is teaching him music, and he loves to pretend like he's a conductor and have his own orchestra. And then we also learned about Otto, the messenger, who read a story about Eins, Zwei, and Drei. And those were the 3 sisters that were caught in the circle of trees and couldn't get out. And they're waiting for the person who can play the woodwind instrument. So, let's find out what's going to happen today. Chapter 6. Friedrich was embraced by the aroma of roasted meat and cinnamon and apples, and he grinned as he hung up his coat on the hall tree, and then he rubbed his hands together with anticipation, and the old cuckoo clock with its carved pine cone weights hugged the wall, and the tiny door framed in a wreath of linden wood leaves and forest animals opened, and the cuckoo slid forward and chirped the hour. "Too bad, old friend," said Friedrich. "You cannot enjoy our meal." "In here," a voice called from the kitchen, and Friedrich found Father at the table and Elizabeth facing the stove, stirring something meaty with a wooden spoon. An apron was tied at her waist over a gray skirt and white blouse, and Friedrich's eyes swept the small kitchen and the walnut hutch with his mother's collection of hand-painted saucers, and the counter with the tin canisters sitting in descending order, the window with the green shutter, and Elizabeth finally home. He rushed up behind her, put his arms around her waist, and lifted her off the floor. "Friedrich, put me down!" Father laughed. Friedrich released her. "Did you miss me, Elizabeth?" And she was almost 18, taller than Friedrich, but not by much, and with the same blue eyes as his and Father's. And her blonde hair hung long and loose, and her dimpled cheeks were flushed pink from the warmth of the room. And fresh bread sat on a board on the table. Spatzel rested in a pan, and strudel dusted with sugar cooled on the back of the stove, and Friedrich reached around to tug on her apron string, and she dodged him, laughing, and threatened with the wooden spoon. "Have you tried to scrub off a patient's birthmark with a shoe brush yet?" he asked. And she put her hands on her hip. "Will you never forget that?" "I don't forget easily. Remember when we used to play hide and seek, and if you found me before I was safe, your reward was to bandage me like a mummy?" Father nodded. "Even then you were a nurse." Last year, Elizabeth went to Stuttgart to live with their only relatives besides Uncle Gunther, Mother's cousin, and his wife and their daughter, Marguerite, who was in nursing school too. But now, Elizabeth's last 3 months of training would be in the local hospital with their family physician, Dr. Braun. "It is good to have you home," said Friedrich, saluting. "I am ready to be ordered about." Elizabeth pointed the spoon toward a chair. "Sit next to Father, and I'll bring the spatzel. Father, you start. Tell me all about your last days at work and your first days as a man of golden age." At the kitchen table, Father talked about all the congratulations and good-natured kidding he'd taken during his last week of work, and the dinners and lunches to honor him. And he talked about starting a small chamber ensemble of musicians. Of course, it won't be as lively as our little performances in the parlor. I'm counting on hearing a polka on the piano later. And she looked at Friedrich and rolled her eyes. "What about you?" Father submitted my application to the conservatory. He will perform for the jury in January. I can tell he's apprehensive, said Father. Talk to him, Elizabeth. Of course you must. It's what you've always wanted, said Elizabeth. What is your worry? Friedrich shrugged. Wasn't it clear what worried him? The jury is only 8 people, said Father. It was easy for Father to say. He wasn't the one who had to stand in front of strangers and pretend there was nothing wrong with his face and perform. And if he was accepted, what then? Would he be able to sit in a classroom with students he'd never met? Even if he could endure the furtive glances and the downcast eyes, what would be the point anyway? How could he stand in front of an audience or dare to conduct an entire orchestra? The idea made his stomach churn. They will be lucky to have your talent, said Elizabeth, and now, more than ever, Germany needs its true citizens to rise to their potential to be shining examples. Father frowned. Well, yes, that's one rationale, but... And what of your work at the hospital? Friedrich didn't want to talk about the conservatory, and he sensed an argument brewing between Father and Elizabeth. It's going well. I observed a reconstructive surgery the other day on a small boy's lip, and it was thrilling. I hope to work in pediatric surgery someday. Now, Friedrich noticed that she'd taken only a few bites of her food and had worried her napkin into a ball. Elizabeth, what's wrong? She looked from Father to Friedrich, and she set down her napkin, folded her hands in front of her plate, and took a deep breath. Before Uncle gets here, there's something I have to tell you both. I hope you will understand. And she sat up straighter. I've been reassigned to a Berlin hospital. I won't be staying in Trostigen or working with Dr. Braun. Berlin? Father's eyes twitched with disappointment. Why? It was all arranged that you'd be here. Yes, I know, said Elizabeth. I only found out a few days ago. Dr. Braun has already been notified. Now Friedrich stared into his plate. His heart was sinking, and there'd be no late-night talks or passing a novel back and forth, or Sunday afternoons playing binnacle. And he looked at Father, not knowing if he felt worse for himself or for him. Father's face had wilted. How long can you stay? Only the weekend. I leave Monday morning on the earliest train. But we've seen so little of you. Father blinked back tears. I know this comes as a surprise, Father, and I'm sorry for that, but this position will be good for my career inside and outside of the hospital. Can't you talk to someone and plead your case for Trostigen? Asked Friedrich. No, I requested to be reassigned. And for a few moments the only sound was the cuckoo clock ticking in the hall, and Father's face wrinkled with confusion. Requested it? Why? Asked Friedrich. Hadn't she wanted to be with them? So much has changed for me. Berlin is the center of many of my activities now, and I should have told you the last time I was home. I should have told you, but there never seemed to be the right moment. You see, after I moved to Stuttgart, Marguerite and I joined the League of German Girls. Father's head snapped back as if he'd been slapped. Elizabeth, you cannot be serious. Friedrich choked on his Spätzle. You're a Hitlerite. And that's the end of chapter 6. There's a lot in that chapter. learning what a Hitlerite is, knowing that she now serves under Adolf Hitler on the German side against Jewish people and many other people. And they're eating something Spetzel. I've never heard of that before. I'm going to have to look it up. I have heard of strudel, so I know what that is, but Spetzel, that's a new one. And this is all German food and German words and things that were happening during the World War II. And it seems like Friedrich is a little bit nervous about going back to school at a conservatory. And he has a right to be. He was bullied pretty bad. This story reminds me of a movie that I have seen. It's called Smile. And the surgery that Elizabeth was talking about, where they were reconstructing the mouth of someone. In the story, and Smile is based off of a true story about doctors who go overseas, and they help do surgeries on small children, many of them a day, and they have to kind of join a lottery to even have the surgery. So they pull the name or number of this child that has signed up for the surgery, and only the ones that they pull the name or number for actually gets to have the surgery, and the rest just have to go home. And that is a real life problem that's going on. Some children do not get the surgeries that they need to help them be able to eat properly, or smile, or just live a normal life without someone bother them about how their face looks. So my heart kind of goes out to kids like this. And we learned about the story Wonder last year, and it has the same kind of character in that. So I hope that you are having a good week this week, and that you're enjoying the book Echo, and I hope you join me next week too for chapter 7. Bye-bye.